I'm Sharon Wren,
And I'm Linda Cook.
and this is Quad Cities Crime Watch. This week, we'll be taking a look at some of the crimes that have happened in the Quad Cities, and we'll check in with some of the court cases we're following. By the way, neither one of us are attorneys and cannot give any sort of legal advice. We've got a bit of breaking news here at Crime Watch.
Sharon, you stumbled on something that was really interesting.
Yes, back in October of 2022, some of you may remember a man named Adrian Rogers was wanted for arson when he encountered East Moline Police Sergeant William Lind. Rogers assaulted Lind, who was hospitalized in Peoria because of his injuries. For a time, Rogers was declared unfit to stand trial. Later, he was found fit to stand trial, and on December 6th, he pleaded guilty to a charge of aggravated battery.
So, in other words, he could have been charged with something more, but he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge.
Right, because a charge of attempted murder is going to be dropped at the sentencing, which is set for February.
Okay.
Both the prosecution and the defense agreed to cap the sentence at 25 years with day-to-day credit. So this case took just over 2 years from incident to plea. Is that considered speedy?
It's not particularly speedy, but it's not unusual. I just had a case that involved a sentencing that happened about 4 years ago. That is unusual, but about 2 years is not. Excuse me. 2 years is not unheard of.
All right then.
So what happened with this case with Sergeant Lind?
Oh, Sergeant Lind was he was on patrol,
Right.
in October of 22 in East Moline, and he saw Adrian Rogers and tried to talk to him about, hey, are you this fellow we're looking for? And Rogers, I guess we can stop saying allegedly because he entered a plea. He attacked Sergeant Lind. Sergeant Lind fell, hit his head on the concrete. He was down, knocked unconscious, and had severe brain injuries.
Okay, so this was a really violent incident.
Very violent.
Okay. So we'll stick with this case, of course, and in February we'll be able to tell you more about what happens, right?
Right.
Okay. I had over the weekend kind of an unusual case. A 26-year-old Davenport man was arrested after police found pornographic images, some of which had photos of children and others that involved a dog. Now, people say to me, how do you know this? Excuse me. People say to me, how do you know this? How did you find this out? Well, I saw that an inmate in Scott County Jail was facing some unusual charges. And when I looked those up in the database that we, and most people can access this, actually it's Iowa Courts Online, and that's where we can see what people call complaints or affidavits.
Well, you have to have a subscription to see the actual complaints.
Right.
But you can click on, the people can go and look.
Right, the
but
public can.
Yeah,
right.
They just can't see the good stuff without a subscription.
Well, right, and so we have a journalistic kind of access to that.
Yeah.
Well, Jacob Seltzer faces 3 felony charges of purchase, possess, depiction of a minor in a sex act, first offense, and an aggravated misdemeanor charge of bestiality, according to court records.
That would stand out, that last one.
That last one did, and although the affidavits go into detail, I will not. However, police did say that Seltzer had pornographic images of children and other images involving a dog. Seltzer was being held on a cash-only bond in Scott County Jail. A cash-only bond means exactly what it says. Let's say your bond was $100 and it was cash only. That means you would have to come up with that $100.
And not the 10%.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So he is scheduled for a preliminary hearing next week. Again, we will be following this case.
And speaking of cases we are following, we have a little tiny update in the civil cases against Andrew Wold in connection with the collapse of the Davenport building in May 2023. An application for admission pro hac vice was filed on November 12th, which would allow an attorney from Los Angeles to represent defendants Waukee Investments and Parkwild Properties.
Oh.
Apparently that's a thing you can do. They can file this paperwork and they don't necessarily have to have passed the bar in that state. They can just appear for one case.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, like a hall pass.
Right. Interesting.
However, this application was denied on December 2nd because the attorney didn't answer all the questions on the application. So the case is progressing, but It's a lot of procedural stuff at this point.
Civil cases always are. And just to refresh, if people don't remember who Andrew Wold was, he was the landlord that owned the Davenport in downtown Davenport that collapsed. And it was on May 28.
Yeah.
And
3 people were killed.
One terribly injured.
So.
And people left without homes. So there's many litigations involved in this case.
This one isn't going to end anytime soon.
No, you're absolutely right. And we'll keep watching that too. This is kind of a topical crime. People hear about thefts. Sometimes it's kids dogging out a car. It means, driving it really fast and then jumping out. Kids are doing that. But thefts, when it comes to adults, usually have, they want the item for either for the item's sake or for money. And in this case, I think it probably was money. 2 Davenport residents faced felony charges after police found them trying to steal copper wire at Midwest Recyclers. Now, this is according to court records. Michael Dugan and Michelle Tim faced charges of conspiracy to commit a non-forcible felony and other charges, including burglary charges. When police responded to Midwest Recyclers, this is the one on Howell Street in Davenport, for a burglary report, they found both of them at the scene. They say that Dugan stole $553 worth of copper from the business, and they found him in a wire pile when they searched the area. So he was right there.
Caught up in the evidence.
I know. Dugan and Tim caused $1,500 of damage to a fence, also that's on the property, because they forced entry through a hole. Dugan had burglary tools. Now, what are burglary tools? That includes channel locks, screwdriver, razor blades, and a file. Police say Dugan and Tim were acting in concert to commit the theft. That means they planned it together and were acting together, and Tim was found near the bag of tools. They were released on their own recognizance. That means that the judge has enough faith in them that they will come back to appear in court, and they are both scheduled for hearings later on this month.
Well, I saw kind of an odd charge the other day when I was digging through the records at the Scott County Jail, and I've seen it a couple other times. It's called simulated public intoxication, which I'm going, simulated. Either you are or you aren't. I guess it's like being pregnant. Either you are or you aren't. Nobody's a little bit pregnant.
Right.
So I found a good description for this latest gentleman who was charged. We're going to call him Bob Jones.
Okay.
This isn't even close to the person's name. According to the criminal complaint, Bob called 911 to say he was overdosing on cocaine.
Oh.
Okay. No, wait, there's more. Then Bob began running through the neighbors' yards and into the middle of the street without a shirt, yelling at cars.
Oh, dear.
Officers found him with some kind of white powder on his nose, but the white powder was not field tested. Usually in these reports, if they catch a person with a substance, they field test it, and it turns out to be fentanyl, cocaine, whatever.
Right.
This was not field tested. A medic treated him for a cocaine overdose, and he was taken to the hospital and then the Scott County Jail.
So the intoxication didn't necessarily have to do with alcohol.
No, and he may or may not have been in the happy stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Because they didn't field test it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so technically it's a misdemeanor, so we don't normally follow misdemeanors, but that was just so weird.
That is interesting, and I have seen that, Sharon. I've seen that charge before, and I never knew what it meant. Thank you.
This was the one. This had the best description of it. So there
very
you go.
Good. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yes.
And of course, we'll be back next week, and we can't tell you what we will be bringing you because we don't know what crimes or allegedly. I'm sorry. We can't tell you, of course, what we'll be bringing you because we can't tell you exactly what incidents will happen in the next few days. But we do thank you for listening, and we ask you to please stay safe out there.
And lock your doors.